These hot dogs just aren't cooking quick enough. Supercharge the coals a bit, and that's what today's show is all about. We're gonna supercharge a Chevy pickup truck. I'll see you inside as soon as I get these hot dogs done. Welcome to Tech Garage presented by Advance Auto Parts. Today it's all about forced induction. You know, we beefed up the brakes on this pickup truck, so it's safe to say we can bolt on some massive power. We're also going to take you through the theory of operation of forced induction and teach you everything you need to know about it.
John, it wasn't that long ago that it was a really big deal to bolt a supercharger on your hot rod or your daily driver like this one. But thanks to the brilliant engineering and design of products like E-Force from Edelbrock, this is actually a day-long job. It's a big job, we get it. But we're gonna follow the directions to the T. We're gonna go step by step, we're gonna take our time, and we are gonna create some massive power on this Chevrolet. No hood modification, minimal modifications out there in the system. We will have to add a fuel pump and some other things, but this is something a car guy like you can do.
Yeah, and this is a complete package. I mean, the supercharger's all right here. One unit takes the place of the whole upper plenum and intake manifold. You got the extra fuel pump. We got a plenum gaskets, we got the pulleys, we got some extruded aluminum rails, we got the injectors, a whole new set of injectors, along with the lines, good breathers so we can get that breathing into that engine, along with the cooling system to keep this thing cool. You know, Brian, they're bolting turbochargers and superchargers on everything today. EcoBoost, EcoTech, I mean, the diesels, they're doing it for gas mileage. If you drive sensibly, you're gonna get good gas mileage with this.
The manufacturers used to use terms like turbo as a marketing tool, and now it's a mileage and performance tool, and it's getting a lot of traction.
You know, Brian, it looks like you have a lot of work in front of you. So what I'll do is I'll head over to our demos, talk about some theory of operation of forced induction.
We're getting busy.
Let's talk supercharging and turbocharging, but let's start out with supercharging, and let's look at the evolution. This is actually the Roots brothers invented this Root-style supercharger way back when. This was in the mines, blowing air down there for the miners, and you guys are probably familiar with this, poking out of the hood, the big old supercharger, but today we're installing this one, this low-profile supercharger. Now this one here, this is capable of about 100 horsepower, rotor design, we'll take a look at that in a minute. Now, here's one right here. This is a Generation 5 Eaton supercharger, and if I pull it out, you can actually see here, these are the rotors. This is the business end of the supercharger. And what's happening is these rotors are spinning around, and when these rotors are spinning around, they're taking the air from the intake, running around the inside of the housing, and cramming it down into the engine. Well, back on that volumetric efficiency lesson, we're actually getting over 100% because we're packing it in there. Now, these are 60-degree, 3-lobe design. Ours, on the other hand, has 4 lobes with a 160-degree twist. That's the Generation 5, there's the Generation 6. Ours is really gonna pack it in there for a good combustion process. Superchargers, and then there's turbochargers. Well, my turbocharger is a little bit different. My turbocharger uses exhaust. Supercharger, belt driven. Gonna rob a little horsepower, but definitely gonna overcome it. Turbochargers, exhaust driven. You can see on this side, this is actually the impeller. What happens is the exhaust drives the impeller, and it's attached over here to the compressor. The compressor takes the air-fuel ratio, compresses it, and puts it in the intake. Once again, volumetric efficiency, same theory, cramming it in there, bigger bang, bigger burn, more horsepower. This is really neat because it's a variable geometry turbocharger. What does that mean? Well, my vanes here, they vary. Well, think about it this way. If I take vanes and I make them really tight together, I can cram that air through there and I can get this impeller spinning a lot faster. That's gonna avoid turbo lag. This is cool. When I'm going down the highway, I'll open them up, don't need to worry about turbo lag. Now these turbochargers are across the line. They're on all cars. As a matter of fact, we visited our local GM dealership. You know, we walked through the doors and the first car on the showroom floor was a 2015 Buick Regal. Popped the hood, lo and behold, turbocharging. 2.0 liter, great on gas mileage, good performance. Now Brian's digging in deep in that 5.3. He's getting all those components off and getting ready to put that supercharger on, and we'll do that when we return with more Tech Garage presented by Advance Auto Parts.
Why is a wastegate not needed on a supercharger? A. Exhaust regulates the supercharger speed. B. Superchargers are engine speed driven. C. Controlling boost is not important when supercharging. Or D. Overboost is acceptable with a supercharger. The correct answer is B. Superchargers are directly linked to engine speed, thus pumping is limited by RPM. This edition of Tech Garage, presented by Advance Auto Parts, is being brought to you by Edelbrock, the most respected name in performance. Stage 8, the world's best locking fastener. Steel Rubber, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping. And by Advance Auto Parts. Let's get you back to the garage.
Hot dogs, apple pie, USA, and a supercharged Chevrolet. Welcome back to Tech Garage. I'm just enjoying a hot dog here that we cooked earlier, but Brian's been working hard on that supercharger. Let's see how it's going. Brian, what you got for us?
Really, John? A hot dog right now? I'll tell you what, we're looking really good out here in the engine bay. Let me tell you what we've been up to. We first removed the intake tube. That wasn't hard to do. Next, we removed the fuel rails, and of course, we depressurized the fuel system so that would be safe on the removal. We wouldn't get any spillage in the engine bay. Then we got the plenum and the intake manifold off as one piece, and finally, the ignition coil packs, not just to protect them, but to give us space to work out in the engine bay. You might be wondering, why is the grill off the truck? The reason why is because this E-Force system from Edelbrock has its own cooling system. It's actually got its own pump, uses 50/50, so it's got to circulate and cool. They sent this radiator, which goes in behind the automatic transmission cooler and in front of the air conditioning condenser. It's an easy install, just 2 brackets. That gets us out here to the engine bay, where Chase won't let us do this any other way. So we've pre-labeled all the wires for the fuel injector connectors, the manifold absolute pressure sensor connector, and a lot of others. The reason why, let's face it, when we get this new supercharger on, we're going to be in a hurry to get everything buttoned back up to get this thing out on the road. So we're pre-labeled and we're pretty clean out here. Now, let's talk about the galley tray. We removed the old galley tray from the engine and we're going to reuse the gasket. Chase and the team have it cleaned up very nicely. It's looking good. We did have to drill some bleeder holes in here and modify this just a bit, but the instructions in the manual are very clear and that wasn't hard to do. The new galley tray, we had to transfer the oil pressure switch over from the old one. That's torqued in properly. That's ready to go. Now, on the bottom of the galley tray, you'll see a little different pattern than on the original. Let me take you over here and show you what's going on. We're in pretty good shape. You can see these surfaces are very clean. Masking tape, a little brake clean, a die grinder with a cookie, and my instructions. They've all been my best friends, and we're making really good progress. And I tell you what, after I get the galley tray in, I'd like it to be my turn for lunch.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian. Those hot dogs were good. While he's eating, I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the pre-assembly that we can do, the fuel rails, and I'm going to jump ahead on the alternator. We're going to clock the alternator. Now, they send all this in the kit. It's really a complete package. This is the fuel rail right here. And I went ahead and assembled the driver's side fuel rail. I had to put these 2 fittings in, and I put all the injectors in. And what's going to happen is, eventually, we're just going to pop that up in there, bolt it on. Your fuel injectors are going to be ready to go. But in order to do that, I'll show you on the passenger side how to assemble one. There's 8 injectors. We'll do 4 of them. I just took these fittings and I had to put them in according to the instructions. Now that's important because you'll notice this one's closer to the tab, so you want to put that one there and the plug on this side. This is the passenger side. No need for any Teflon or any liquid sealant on these because they have O-rings on the end. So you just put them in. Be careful, this is all aluminum. Come down, just snug it up. You'll feel the O-ring crush in there. Once I do that, we can come back and start working on the injectors. Now, they send you new injectors. Remember that fuel pump earlier? We're going to be pumping a little more pressure. We're going to have to get a little more fuel in there. All the way back to that volumetric efficiency, 14.7 to 1. No matter what, we're forcing a lot of air in, we got to match the fuel. Now, the injector came just like this, right out of the kit. Now, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and remove these clips. We're not going to use these. Maybe the 6.2 or the other engine might, but we're not going to on our engine. Then what we did is these are new O-rings, but on our engine we actually have to upgrade it to the bigger O-ring. So what we want to do is come over and pop this one off, and then you gently want to work it back on. That's what I did to all of them. Work on the R O-ring, Make sure that you don't cut any of these O-rings or damage any of these O-rings. It's a tight fit over there, but it has to seal an immense amount of pressure coming through there. Now once you got it on there, that's fine. These are going to go into the block. This end right here is going to go into the block. This end is going to go into our fuel rail. Now to put them in the fuel rail, you just want to work them in little by little. I like to use a little silicone, get them lubed up. Make sure I don't pinch them, and when they go in there, they're going to go in a little bit easier. Then we'll take the fuel rail and we'll just work the injectors in. Just back and forth, just work it, don't force it. They'll go in. It's nice new stuff, perfect fit. Come back here, same thing. And you can look down in there, make sure they're not pinched, make sure they're not coming off. You don't want any fuel leaks later. Get them all in there like that. And then our fuel rails, once we get it in the truck, you might not be able to see this from behind, but I'll go ahead and show you what's going to happen. Our fuel supply is going to come in here and go right to here. Our fuel supply will come in from the truck. This is going to extend it. It's going to extend it to the front of the rail, and then the back will have a crossover from one rail to the other. This will go behind there and actually let the fuel flow to all the injectors with our good pressure. One other step we have to do, we have to clock an alternator. Well, you might have heard that term before. If you hung out in the junkyard like I have, we got some alternators for 3 different makes and models, but they all fit the same make and model, but the brackets were wrong. Well, that's what's happening here. The bracket has to be moved up in order to accommodate the plug. So to do that, I'll show you how to clock an alternator. Now we do it, the instructions are real easy. You pop this black cap off, 3 little tabs there, you pop that off, and once you pop that black cap off, I'm going to get these inverted Torxes, and I'm going to take them out. Now, we used to do that years ago just for brackets to match up because we couldn't afford a new alternator, so we get 3 or 4 for one make or model, and the brackets were just a little different. All right, once you got all the bolts out, really you want to be careful. You don't want to separate it because there's brushes and all kinds of things going on back here. But the kit just says simply take the front and clock it clockwise. So what I want to do is I want to go to the next position on the bolt hole. So I was right there. All we're going to do is take that next bolt and bring it around to right there. Now what did that do? In essence, I took the bracketry and I moved it so the plug would wind up in the right place. Once you do that, just get you a little Loctite, put them on the bolts, reseal it, and your wire harness will fit perfectly when we go to adapt it on the car. With this here, I'm about ready to put that supercharger on. I can't wait. So stick around. It's fixing to go on that 5.3 as soon as we return with more Tech Garage presented by Advance Auto Parts.
Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by Advance Auto Parts. This is going to be the best part of the day. I got to tell you, John, this is going to be a beast when we get it installed. I just recently got the galley tray torqued down in a perfect crisscross pattern. It says to use anti-seize. I did, so our bolts and our galley tray's in good shape.
Now, while you were doing that, I installed the intake manifold gaskets. There's a nice grommet that holds them secure, and I went ahead and connected the map sensor on the back. You're not going to get to that one later.
No, and don't forget, our E-Force Supercharger here has its own cooling system. So we've pre-installed the water pump for that. The radiator for it out front actually went in behind the aux cooler on the Silverado. It was just 3 brackets, didn't take any time at all. So we're pre-plumbed there too.
And I put the crossover pipe in up here on the top so the coolant will flow and it won't obstruct the supercharger.
I think there's just one thing left to do.
Yep, we're about ready to put it in. But you know, this is a 2-person job. You want to make sure you get your buddy out there before you do this because this thing's heavy first off. Now second, you got those gaskets under there. You want to be careful. Just keep a good visual look on them. Make sure you're not pinching them. Go on in. If you see anything popping off or going loose, pull it back out, reset, and do it again. I'm ready. You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
It's heavy, but it's not obnoxiously heavy. I tell you what, take your time here and be surgical just like we have all day. Everything's clean. I got a pretty good fit over here, John. How you looking?
Fits like a glove.
Yeah, look good. Fantastic. This is where really good engineering pays off. That was easier than it should have been.
It was, and you know what? That thing looks good, but we got a few more steps to do. We'll go ahead and start running these bolts in. Intake bolts, you want to take these intake bolts, you want to run them in there. Instructions tells you to start torquing them from the middle, work your way out in a crisscross pattern, very simple. 44 inch-pounds on the first pass, come back, do another, I think it says 89 inch-pounds on the second pass. So you get a nice distribution of torque.
Perfect. We get the fuel rails on after this. You've already got the injectors pre-installed, which is perfect. We'll need the air filter. We'll need to add the throttle body. And man, we're one step closer.
We are. You know, they give you this nice wire harness here, just plugs into all the plugs we already have labeled. Just follow your label and everything's right on there. This will extend any of the plugs to where they need to go. Got our brackets modified for our alternator, put on our serpentine belt, plumb this thing up, and we'll be ready to run it. I'm gonna go ahead and run mine down. I got a 1/4 inch socket here with a little wobble to get down in there. It's a good thing we didn't put the fuel rail on now.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to over torque, and a 1/4 inch is a great start foundationally. Then you come back and you get a proper torque. Again, crisscross all the way out.
I'm so excited. We are so close to firing this thing up and making some boost, and we'll do that. You don't want to miss it, so stick around. We'll be right back with more Tech Garage presented by Advance Auto Parts.
This edition of Tech Garage, presented by Advance Auto Parts, is being brought to you by Dustless Blasting. It's the future of surface preparation. Borla, the world's most winning exhaust. Edelbrock, the most respected name in performance. And by Advance Auto Parts. Let's get you back to the garage.
Welcome back to Tech Garage. Now the moment we've all been waiting for, we're ready to crank this truck up.
It's been a ton of work, John, but wait till you see the reward.
Now a few things we did, we had to go and program it. They send this programmer, give the computer some updates. We did that first. In case we run into any problems, we can call Edelbrock and go ahead and get a new program for it.
And don't forget, this E-Force has its own cooling system. Now, there's a lot of plumbing we had to do. There's a water pump. We installed it down low. Fasteners are good. No leaks in any of the hoses. And we used 50/50 here in the reservoir, so this truck can go in any climate, John.
Yeah, and we also went down to our local dealer. We had to borrow this tool to hold the flywheel, to break the harmonic balancer nut loose. Then they give us this template here. All we did was just put it in with their bolt they supplied, drilled a hole, put a roll pin in the flywheel, hold that harmonic balancer with a little extra tension that Supercharger's putting on it.
And a 90-degree drill made a big difference there, so there's no damage to the back of the radiator. We also installed a high-volume fuel pump. Not too bad of a job on this pickup truck. We just slid the bed out of the way, dropped the new pump in. I think we're ready.
Also relocated the brackets here for the alternator, our belt, got our wire harness on, double, triple checked everything. Let's hear it sing. Yeah. Tack it up some, I want to hear it.
Tell you what, it was a full day. In fact, you might want to allocate an entire weekend. I certainly had a little help from my friends on this project, but E-Force and Edelbrock do a great job of laying this out. It's pictorial, it's color. You got a lot of support here and online. So allow the time, be patient. The right tools for this job are critical. And I'll tell you what, this thing's awesome.
Brian, our email question of the week has something to do with air-fuel ratios.
John, Ricky from Pittsburgh emailed us this week. He's got an 02 F-150 with a 5.4-liter motor in it. He continues to get a P0171 code. I think that's a lean condition. What can he check?
Well, Ricky, that's actually a lean bank 1. And Brian, that's famous on these intakes.
Yeah.
5.4 has been across the line forever, and a lot of times you'll get that lean code. Not much direction to go in, but I would check for vacuum leaks. You can see the two intakes. The first one, this is a factory one here, sitting here, and also had a couple of other issues. Brian, you got one over there.
Sure did. They had coolant crossover issues. The factory one uses a plastic coolant crossover passage. This is aftermarket. It's been upgraded to a steel, actually alloy crossover, much more reliable. It's not going to crack. But they are definitely famous for vacuum leaks as well.
And you can check the vacuum leaks. There's a couple ways to do it. Now, professionals use a smoke machine. What they do is they just take some smoke from this machine, they go ahead and introduce it into a vacuum source somewhere on the motor, maybe even the throttle body itself. And what's going to happen here is you see it pouring out. Now, it normally wouldn't pour out there. If you had a vacuum leak on your gasket, one of the hoses, or the intake manifold's cracked, that's where that smoke's going to come out of. You found it. Now, Brian, you got a couple of driveway tricks.
I do. Now, my dad taught me this a long time ago, but you got to be really careful if you're going to use carbon choke cleaner to test. But you will hear a difference. If you can find your vacuum contact points and you have good access and you can do this safely in the driveway, keep in mind there's heat out there in the engine bay. There's exhaust manifolds around close by. But just a slight little dab, just put the nozzle in, a slight little squirt at any of those contact points, you'll definitely hear a difference in the RPM, and that can be your audible cue that you may have a vacuum leak. A little more professional way to do it is these aren't very expensive, get good mechanic stethoscope, right? And you can take the probe out, put the stethoscope in, and with the engine running, check all those same points. You'd be amazed how much you can hear air whispering where it shouldn't be, and there's your vacuum leak, and you can track it down audibly this way as well. A little more professional, a little bit safer, but either way will work.
And that's just cool. You look like a doctor. Well, between our Supercharger today and the upgrades on that truck, man, it was a phenomenal day. That Edelbrock is really going to wake that truck up. Oh, yeah. But, you know, I got a few issues. That truck's so plain Jane. I mean, we're going to have to address it and make it match that Supercharger.
I don't know. I like the whole sleeper thing. I like sitting at the stoplight. Nobody knows what's growling out there under the hood, and we can smoke anybody no matter what they pull up next to us in.
Well, speaking of smoking, we smoked the time for today. Look forward to seeing you next week. From our garage to your garage. Thanks for watching Tech Garage.
Production assistance for Tech Garage is provided by Chipola College, located in Marianna, Florida. Founded in 1947, Chipola College has a current enrollment of over 2,000 students. Chipola was recently ranked as one of the top 3 community colleges in the United States.